Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. We're back today to work on another block for our AZURE project. And let me tell you, this one is proving to be a little more difficult than I anticipated, with everything from color selection and preparing our pieces to the actual assembly of this block. So join us right after this and let me tell you some of the things that I've encountered and how I work through them. We'll be right back. I would say this block has been a headache, but it's not been quite that hard, but it is very tedious to try to get all of the pieces lined up just right and get it together with the right colors, and wow, quite a job. So we're here today and I hope that I can finish putting it together for you. This block is number 13, Bright Morning Star. And let me show you the diagram first. Here it is. This is the little diagram of the block. Now remember, these are 6-inch blocks that we're working on, and that makes the pieces just a little fiddly, especially when you're talking about a block like this that has so many pieces. And you'll look at this and you'll recognize this. This is an 8-pointed star in the middle of this block, which is very common in a lot of the quilt patterns that we see, and it has lots of different names. So it is good basic practice for knowing how those blocks go together in case you wanted to consider doing a full-size quilt that was similarly designed. So let's just get into it, shall we? The first thing I did was I took the diagram here and I was coloring it. And then I took those colors and decided on the fabrics that I actually wanted to use. And then in this pattern, you have all of these little 2-part pieces. And let's see, this one right here is F1, F2. This is this block right here. I think you can see that. Let's see if we can get you a little closer, because I wanted you to really see. Oh, so sorry about how fast that went. I'll give you a minute to adjust. But this is F1, F2, and it's attached to G2, G1, which is this piece. Okay, follow me so far? So you've attached that piece to this piece, just like we have here. And then we're attaching this whole section to another section. So on your diagram here, that would be this. Now, what I decided and determined was, after working on this a little while and trying to follow the steps that they gave me, it confused me greatly. But what I decided is, once I got them together in these little 4 units, they were all the same. So as long as I used the same technique to put them together, it really didn't matter which 2 were attached, as long as it yielded the same result. And then for the squares and the triangles, they're interchangeable. So while they do have letters here to indicate which one is which, you don't hardly have to follow that as long as you get the shape in the right place. I hope that makes sense. Now, what was difficult about putting it together is that, I'll tell you what, let's sew this and then I'll show you, because I think it'll be a little easier to understand. And what I've done here is I'm sewn the 2 pieces to the 2 pieces, and then that 4 piece goes to another 4 piece. So I'm going to sew that real quick so we can talk about it. And I'm using the same techniques that I used for the other block. The only thing that I didn't do in the pieces that I've already put together, and I wish I had, was to do that little back stitch at the end of the row where they are pinned together, because it does hold it together better than not having it. And I noticed that when I start putting all these pieces together, those seams want to come undone. So I would recommend that you do that, especially maybe not for the first little section you put together, but once you're comfortable with how it goes and you understand it all, then go ahead and put that back stitch. So now you've got, I'm just going to call this kind of a modified heart shape or a wing shape or a butterfly shape. And this is this. But you can see how when we're looking at colors and we need to put this on one side and this on the other side, the key to that is to remember that for my coloring, these two are the same. And then you put these two on the inside. I don't think it matters which is the inside, so if you happen to get it turned the other way when you were putting the fabric on it, I don't think that would matter. But when you assemble it, you just want to make sure that your fabric's in the right place before you move forward. Okay, so we've got that done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly take a little bit of this paper out, because there's so many pieces coming together that it just gets too bulky, especially in the middle. Okay, so we've got that out there, and I think we'll go ahead and take it out on this side too. And then we'll come back and get what's in the middle. Oops, that one, ooh, got a little crazy with that, sorry. We'll work through it though. Okay. So now you've got that section, and what you have to do is you have to sew these pieces together, which means you've got a seam, a seam, a seam, and a seam. Now, when I tried to sew this together the way the instructions told me, first of all, I'll go back to my previous comment in another video on this project. I get very confused on the fact that when I set it out this way and try to put it together, it's backwards from the fabric. So I have a hard time conceptualizing that, and that is very difficult for me. But I try to muddle through it the best I can. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here by stitching it to the center first. And we're going to stitch this seam right here. So we're going to put our pins in just like normal. Now I tore that paper away, but I think I've adjusted it and I have it in the right place. And then on the back side, we put those in like that. And this one is going to go right in the middle, and we're going to have to fold that back so we can get to this piece right here, because we're trying to only sew it into one connection point. We don't want to sew it through all of the fabric and all of the seams. We're just trying to sew it. And this might be a concept or a task that if you were hand piecing this, it would be much easier, because you can very easily sew through one and then come back and sew through the other. Okay, so we're going to stitch from here to here, and we're going to go through a seam in the middle. I'm going to put some pins there and there to kind of help us hold that. We're going to take that one out, and we're going to try to start right here in this really bulky middle area. We're dealing with a lot of fabric, a lot of seams, and a lot of things coming together to make this work. And that's one of the things that is driving my opinion that this is one of the most difficult blocks. And frankly, there may be a better way to put it together. But I am really only intending on doing this block one time. Let me make sure my cameras are running, because I don't want to have to do it again. Okay, we're going to start. Oops. Now I didn't backspace because when I started stitching, my fabric really wasn't moving. So I think that that in itself is equivalent to a backspace. Okay, let's see how we did. This is always the moment of truth. Pretty good. We managed to match up this seam, or close enough that with the dark colors you aren't going to notice. And down here, we appear to be close to the center. And I think for some of these, that's as good as you're going to get, because there's just so much going on there. It's hard. It is really, really hard to get it where it needs to be. Okay, so we've got that one. Here. Let's see, we've got all this here that we need to deal with. I think I'm just going to pull it all back and pin it. This is the last seam going into the center. So it will be, just by its nature, more difficult. We'll switch that to the other side, and we're going to try it. It's no fun ripping out seams, but you know, there's really no guarantee either when you're sewing it that you've got it right. And you just have to take a chance. Okay, a little check down there to make sure everything's in the right place. Okay, we're going to flip our seam here. I'll tell you what, we're not going to flip it because that will make it a little flatter. Okay, and that should be the center. We're not going to do much of a back stitch just in case we didn't hit that center just right and we have to repair it. So let's see how we did again. We've got a lot of bulk here, a lot of bulk. But I think we did pretty well. And we're not going to know until we get some of this paper out of here. There's just too much paper. A lot of paper over here, and it looks like we may have caught another seam in our seam. Let's see what we can do with that. On this particular block, you'll notice that I did a lot of sewing before I started filming because it was so complicated. And as I was doing some pre-sew, because I don't want to have you sit here and watch the whole thing. It would just take too long. And I don't think that seeing the same thing over again is really beneficial. But I did a pretty good bit because it was so complicated. And I wanted to make sure, number one, that I was feeling confident that I could do it and explain it. But I also wanted to have enough of it done that we could see the end and not have a 4-hour video. I think that when I was sewing on this the other day, I spent about 3 hours, no joke, getting all but this one piece together. And that includes everything from the choosing the colors and cutting the pieces and basting them in place and sewing the primary pieces together. It was very time consuming. Okay, I'm not happy with the thread in there. And I'll tell you what it may come down to is taking the center apart and sewing it by hand. I'm not quite sure yet. It may be that we could spin those seams in some way and that would help, but there's just too much bulk right there. But we'll just move beyond that a moment and see what's next. Now, we have this piece that we just sewed in here and here, and we need to put this seam in and this seam in. So we're going to do that. And those will be much easier because we're only dealing with our regular number of seams. I would think if I were telling you how to put this together in the most efficient way, I would create this star in 4 pieces. And you could even do it this way, this 4, and then I would sew this section to this section, and I would sew this section to this section, and then I would sew these together. And then at that point I would come back and put the corners on and the triangles. That seems like it makes the most sense, but in reading this, that's not exactly the way it was coming across to me. It was coming that we would just sew in a circle and put all of them together. And I think that that's probably what caused all that bulk in the center. Oops, I didn't get any clips in here. Let's get at least one clip. Whoops, I lost that pin. And a pin. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's do the other side. These are straightforward, just like we've been doing them. And while we're sewing these, let me add a couple of comments, if I could, about foundation paper piecing. I really enjoy the fact that you're able to create complicated designs and they come out so neat looking. Now, some of these blocks have been really easy and straightforward. And some of them, like this one, have been troublesome. It's not my favorite way of quilting. Or should I say, it's not my favorite way of piecing. But I can see the advantage to the technique. I don't think that I would ever do another quilt top that was a bunch of different blocks like this because I just don't enjoy it very much. See, I'm struggling just to figure out which way that's going. I think that there are other things that I personally would enjoy better. I would have more fun with. And for that reason, I don't think I would. Now, there could come a pattern that I just liked so much that I was willing to do it. But today, after working on this one and the other one that I've been working on, I would be a little bit hesitant, if I'm being really honest with you. And I know that people who do this a lot probably have more tips and tricks that they know that help you understand what you're doing, and you're more efficient at it. And that's always a benefit, because you're going to enjoy it when you know those tips and tricks. And I can't talk and concentrate on the end of the stitching. If you know all those tricks, then you're going to enjoy it more, right? And that's one of the main reasons that we're here, is to share information. If you've never done a foundation paper piecing, don't take only my word for it. You also should probably speak or listen to a video of someone who does a lot of it and really excels in it, because they're going to give you, more than likely, an entirely different opinion based on their experience. Okay, this should be our final seam. So let's go ahead and do this. That should be it. And I always like to think of my quilting as 90% doing something I know, and then 10% going outside of my comfort zone to do something new. Or maybe it's 80-20, I'm not sure. Okay, there's our block. It's roughly sewn. I don't like this seam here. We've got too many threads showing. So I'll probably pick that out and come back and see what I can do. But the first thing I'm going to do is take this paper out and try to give it a little press and see if that improves the way it looks. I like the block. I'm a sucker for those traditional blocks. I don't necessarily like something that's very homespun looking, but in the context of a vintage quilt, I really do like those. Okay, that's most of them. Let me give this a little bit of a press, and then of course our iron will talk to us for half an hour, but let me press this and we'll come back and see how it looks before we do any tinkering with it. This did get better in the center by pressing it and adding a little bit of starch, but I think we still could do a little bit better, either by spinning those seams a bit or clipping out some of the bulk. We'll just have to see what works the best. Now on the front, here's the front of the block, and it is stunning. It really is. Now, if I had used the white for the blocks and the triangles, I think you really would have seen it even more. But at the time that I was trying to decide what to use, we've got a lot of blocks that have white on the outside, and I really wanted this to have color. I didn't really understand what kind of impact that was going to have. So if you're doing this, you might want to consider that, because this is a different fabric from this. But getting back to it, it's a very complicated block, and it is one of the blocks that I would recommend that if you do this block, you use a color match thread, because you can see with this, I used a white thread because that's what I've been using with all of these blocks, and you can really see it on this one. That and doing that little back stitch will help a lot with that. So there is our block, Bright Morning Star number 13. I really like the way it came out. To me, I'm not sure if it looks like a star or just a big flower, but either way, it is very attractive. It's probably not the neatest block I've ever done, if I'm being honest, because of the stitching and so forth. But I'm not going to do it over. It was just too much effort to get this together. So what I'll do is I will go in here and clip this really well, get the rest of the paper out, evaluate whether we need to do anything with the center of this block, and then just move forward after that. And I think too that it probably could be stretched out just a little bit more when we go to trim it up and work it into our quilt. Even with the problems, I have enjoyed doing this block. I like to see the end result, and I'm very happy with it. I think that generally speaking, I might be interested in doing a bigger version of something like this, but I'm not interested in doing a little tiny one like this because this was a challenge. And I am happy with the way it turned out, generally speaking. If I were doing it again, there were some things I would do different. But given that this has been a learning experience for me, I'm pleased with it and willing to use it as it is. Again, this is block number 13, Bright Morning Star. And we're going to be using it in our AZURE project, which we should be getting ready to work on the last maybe few blocks of this quilt. And it is July. This will go up during the month of August. So I think that if not before, by the time we get to late September, we're going to start working on sashing, block placement, maybe even while we're still working on the blocks, because I'm getting anxious to see it begin to come together. Not necessarily to finish it, but begin to see the pieces come together to see what it's going to look like. And I think that I would like to at least lay out most of the blocks to see what the placement is going to look like in case I need to change my mind about a block or two, either in their color and fabric placements or in the block itself. Because sometimes you can get blocks that are different blocks, but they look so similar you have to put them further away from each other in a quilt to get that balance. And we might need to substitute one block for the other. And I don't want to get into a situation where I have to over make blocks to make that happen. Anyway, that's a lot about my planning and not necessarily this block. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. It's always a good thing to send that little share off, and it's a little gift to let someone know you're thinking about them and something that they may enjoy as well. Again, thanks so much for being here, and we will see you next week at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.